So, the end of part two, we had Henry get his divorce from Catherine and married Anne Boleyn and was still itching for that male heir. And instead, he has his second daughter, Elizabeth I. So, Henry is now angry with Anne to begin part three, who cannot give him a son. Same thing is happening, and Anne is again trying to get pregnant. She has a miscarriage. She's getting very, very frustrated too. And Henry is starting to, wants to get rid of her. But he is fearful that another divorce would look really bad for him. So he decides, I can't get another divorce, so how can I get rid of Anne? And then he comes up with kind of a plan. Anne, being young, was very, flirtatious and would oftentimes chat with, the other men that were in the court and things like that. And so what Henry decides is to accuse her of what's called adultery. Adultery is basically that saying someone is cheating on their spouse or significant other. So he accuses her of adultery, that she's going around and having affairs behind his back. And back then, adultery was kind of considered a very serious offense and crime. And so since the queen is having an affair and cheating on the king, then what he decides is that she should be punished. And the punishment for being an adulteress is being beheaded. So poor Anne Boleyn is beheaded, and she now is out of the picture. So now Henry is left again to figure out, what am I going to do? So then, shortly after, he meets another young lady by the name of Jane Seymour, and he marries Jane Seymour. And Jane Seymour is going to be considered the wife that he absolutely loves and adores. And why does he love Jane Seymour so much? Well, because Jane Seymour is going to be the wife that is going to give him his male heir. She is going to give birth to their son, Edward VI. But unfortunately for Jane, shortly after, due to complications with the childbirth, she is going to die. So poor Henry is devastated because here, now he has a wife, she gives him the son that he wants, and then she dies. So now Henry decides, all right, well, I'm going to get married again. So now who should he marry? So interestingly enough, someone within his court shows him a portrait of a woman named Anne of Cleves. And he sees this beautiful portrait of her, much like the one in front of you right now. And he thinks, oh, I must marry her, send for her. And Anne of Cleves lives up in Scandinavia. So she lives pretty far away. And so he sends for her, and she basically travels all of this way to England, gets to England, and what was common was that sometimes they, the husband and wife wouldn't even see each other or meet each other before they got married. And so this is what happened in this case. Henry didn't see Anne until literally she was walking down the aisle to get married to him. And when he sees her, he's just like, oh my gosh, she is ugly. And supposedly, Anne of Cleves resembled much like a horse in the face and was just not the most attractive woman. And Henry was absolutely disgusted by her. So he marries her, and then pretty much just as quickly, they get divorced. So he ends up now divorcing Anne of Cleves. And again, now the question is, who should he marry? So then he marries Catherine Howard. And Catherine Howard was a young lady in the court as well. So at this point, Henry's now in his 40s, and Catherine Howard was about 19 years old. So he marries her, and then Catherine Howard, being young, she's flirtatious again with some of the men and other people in the court. Henry gets jealous, doesn't like that. So he decides, Catherine, I think you're committing adultery. So he accuses her of adultery, and she is beheaded. So now Catherine Howard's gone, and that takes us to finally wife number 6, if you were counting, Catherine Parr. And so he marries Catherine Parr, and he's married to Catherine until his death. So Henry altogether had 6 wives. He had 3 wives named Catherine, 2 wives named Anne, and then the one that he loved the most was Jane. And then there's a little song that goes to help us remember his wives, that it goes, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. That's the little rhyme that goes to help us remember the order in which he had his wives and got rid of them. So that is Henry VIII and kind of his story. And then we'll pick up with part 4.